Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, a podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your ghosts. That's nice. That's a nice Freudian slip almost. Your hosts are Steve Becker and Chris Whitman. You can find out more about us at horrormakesushappy.com. Today's guest is Mia Prime, an aspiring author and fellow. And see, I was going to say horror fan, but when you and I were talking before, you actually used the term spooky fan. So even before we get into let's put that aside for a second. So we'll do some preamble stuff for the listeners, and then I'll ask that first. Some trigger warnings. We're going to be talking about horror-related stuff, which could involve anything: murder, rape, suicide, child abuse, F-bombs. Chris and I are not self-censoring in that manner, so if you're not ready for that, take care of yourself and come back when you are. We're going to be asking 3 sets of questions covering childhood, teenage years, and adulthood to find out a number of different things that we can maybe tie back towards horror interests. We're going to do it this way because sometimes it triggers different memories when you come at things from different directions like that. But it's not meant to be a therapy session. So if there are any questions that you don't want to answer, you can just say you'll pass or you want to pass and we'll move on. Okay.
Yeah.
So horror versus spooky. Let's start there. How do you define the difference?
And that's definitely something I've kind of had to break down ever since, being asked the question, why is it that I view horror and spooky as something different? Because certainly I like my horror films as well. But I always feel like there's a distinction. And I think what I've come to is that horror, I immediately start thinking of, the gore and the blood splatters and the zombies and all that kind of visual goriness. Whereas with spooky,
all the fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly. All the fun stuff.
But spooky is also fun.
But I think with spooky, while it could have, some gore to it, I think there's a little bit more of a mystery element when it comes to spooky. You won't say that a serial killer is spooky. You'll say that they're horror because there's that, what this is, where it's coming from, or at least, that's the idea, is you're going to track down this person and you can get a whole profile on a killer based off of their crime scene that they left behind. Whereas spooky, you see the lights flicker and you're like, that's spooky. Was it the electricity just having a moment, or am I being possessed?
So maybe the word suspense. Yeah. Maybe you're thinking of spooky as being more suspenseful than in your face.
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit more of a mystery. There's some element of not quite knowing what's going on, and this might be perfectly fine, or it might not be.
Yeah, more supernatural.
I mean, you could certainly get some supernaturals, but it's a whole. I think it comes down to semantics and the way that I kind of define the terms.
The reason I wanted to start by asking that was, so Chris is more of the horror fan and I'm more of the psychology fan. So I didn't know if spooky is some industry term that people who are fans would recognize, or is it just a personal description, or that's where I wanted to start with, was just to try to define that. So is that a personal?
Most people these days say spooky with a P because, the internet.
I cannot tell you how much I hate it too. And I don't know why, but I really hate it.
It drives you nuts.
It really does. It's one of those words.
So it's not just a personal definition. This is something that other people besides you use a similar definition as well.
I think it's one of those cultural things where we think it's a personal kind of word, but when you start talking to people and you start having conversations about what you're into, everyone seems to kind of know that there's a difference between horror and spooky. You don't know quite why you know that there's a difference, but you can immediately tell that there's some gray line somewhere, and they might be able to touch and intermingle, but there is at some point in time a delineation between something that's horror and something that's just spooky.
Okay. So let's jump into the rest of the interview proper then. So let's start with childhood. What are some of your earliest memories of scary things? Maybe 2 or 3 examples of scary things from your childhood.
I think that the earliest things that I could remember really being into, I grew up near a library, and I think I probably checked out every single Goosebumps book that there was and read them 2 or 3 times over. And that kind of love of suspense and scariness, I think that actually rooted more in the show Unsolved Mysteries, where just hearing his voice, you would just immediately get goosebumps. And you're like, oh, this is, scary. It's spooky. It's suspenseful.
And it definitely was designed for that. You could tell just by the way they did it.
Yeah. And as a kid, you don't know that. You don't realize that they're setting it up in such a way in order to get that response from you. But here it is, years later. And the moment I hear his voice, I immediately just get those kind of
or the
good
theme
goosebumps
song.
where, oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Yes.
Okay. So Goosebumps, Unsolved Mysteries. Anything else?
For childhood, I think those were like the strongest influences. I've got X-Files listed as well, but I think that is getting a little bit more into, the older years.
Okay.
But those were definitely any kind of scary story. Oh, I almost forgot. Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
How could you forget that?
Yeah, that's been a long time since I thought about that. But I remember just being terrified whenever that show would come on, and yet I couldn't step away. And I'd always be a little bit disappointed after this entire show. It wasn't as good as the last one, or it wasn't as scary. And and I couldn't understand that. I was like, why would I be upset that it wasn't as scary as the last one? The last one terrified you, and you didn't want to go to sleep for 2 nights.
And that's kind of exactly the reason that I wanted to do this kind of podcast thing is, we've got a spreadsheet where we're going to be keeping track of all the guests, and I've got a column for if by the time we get to the end of this interview, hopefully we can sort of piece together what it is that you personally get out of horror, and by going through and interviewing a number of people, maybe we'll see some common themes. And maybe some that are not so common, and that might be interesting too.
That'd be really cool to see.
Yeah.
Can you recall if there was anybody with you at the time of these memories, and if so, did they react the same way? Like, were they also scared, or were they? I mean, this one's kind of weird for childhood because usually most of your scary childhood memories are when you're alone.
Yeah,
it's scarier.
And I grew up with a lot of siblings. I have 5 brothers, a stepsister, and a half sister. And I grew up with all but one of them. So there was definitely a age range, which didn't help because, of course, the older ones would see the younger ones getting scared and would be able to mess with them. But in most of my younger memories, there's definitely at least one of the siblings where we'd watch this and we'd, both be, holding on to our blankets as we're watching the show in the dark, because that's what you do when you're a kid. And they definitely, I think, helped kind of put certain things into context. I'd see how one would react versus another one. Why is it that this younger brother had a reaction to that particular show or that particular scene, whereas the other ones didn't? So yeah, as a kid, I think most of the scary stuff came with having siblings around, which I think made it a little bit less scary, knowing that there was someone there that would help figure out, what's going on and what do you think is going to happen. And, if nothing else, you can knock on the door and say,
yeah, or in the very least, somebody you can look over to for a glance, like are they having the same reaction I am?
Exactly.
And going back on the, I was just going to say, going back on the Are You Afraid of the Dark thing, I did want to just point out, you kind of touched on it a little bit, Steve, but it's interesting. Our first guest, we were saying that things of the horror nature in both of our interviews in the childhood phase, we were like, no, it was pretty much fear, didn't like it. And, we were wondering if we were going to come across any guests who right out the gate in the childhood phase were just like, yeah, I loved it. And seems like we're kind of already going down that
first one.
Well, and I think part of it,
achievement unlocked.
I think part of it for me too is, I've always been really into storytelling. And when I got these questions that you guys sent me, I had to fill them out the first time and immediately lost most of the questions and had to rewrite them and redo them, of course. But the first time I wrote this, I had mentioned that I was really into fairy tales as a kid. And I mentioned a lot of people when they hear fairy tales, they think, Disney and Disney princesses and, G-rated happiness. I'm like, no, I'm talking about fairy tales like Grimm's Brothers. Like, when you get into like those old German fairy tales where if you get to the end of the story and everyone has their appendages and no one's bleeding, like you haven't really read a good story. So I kind of had a bit of a primer.
Talk about, chopping toes and heels off and stuff.
Yeah. And that was definitely my first kind of experience with, stories in general, never mind, any kind of media. So when you've got people chopping off toes and heels in order to fit into a shoe, or, princes falling from towers and getting their eyes gouged out by brambles and wandering around the forest for a year blind, I think it is not nearly as a shock when you start seeing like the scary movies and it just is more visual. I do remember being scared the first time I saw Freddy, but it also intrigued me of like, why did I have that reaction? What was it about this? Let's go back around and see it.
I will say there's definitely a change. Well, I shouldn't say this because, maybe it's just an American thing, but I know a lot of the old fairy tales have been sort of
sanitized.
Yeah, sanitizing the stuff where, back in the day, the fairy tales were really sometimes very gruesome, scary things, partially because of sort of inoculizing the kids to the fact that bad things can and do happen. And, there's, how can I say this? There's a lot of people today that don't know how to process their own emotions and expect other people to process or to change reality because I can't process my own emotions. And I think some of that has to do with, childhood, that, like the helicopter parenting thing, but we're getting way off topic here. But I think that has something to do with that ties into the fairy tale thing, that if you water down the fairy tales to helicopter parent your child, then you're not necessarily you're kind of doing a disservice.
And that was very much the whole point of fairy tales, like you said, was to tell kids, don't go into the dark, spooky forest alone. Yeah. You could get eaten by a wolf.
Don't go play in traffic.
Yeah. Don't do these things because you're not immune just because you're a kid. Bad things happen to kids too. And
no houses are actually made out of gingerbread.
Yeah, don't eat the house made out of gingerbread in the middle of the woods. Bad idea.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't trust strangers.
So, so we talked about who was with you at the time, how you felt. Did this stuff trigger any fears that you hadn't had before? Like, did it make you scared of certain things?
See, I was always a little bit odd when it came to and I didn't realize it was an odd thing.
Good first guess.
Sorry. No, I would have like bouts where I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to sleep with the lights off today, or I need the door cracked. But, it would usually be right after it would happen, and then it would fade pretty quickly. I think really the only thing that got me, there was a episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark where there was a invisible monster in the pool. And I didn't like that. I did not like that at all, because I'm not really much for, getting wet and swimming anyways. But the idea of something holding you down and nobody can see that you're being held down, that freaked me out. And I did not want to go into the deep end for a while. But that really lasted. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I can totally relate. I think that's actually, I've like mulled it over, and I think that's probably one of my biggest fears, is just the feeling of being in, like, if you were, say, out in like the movie Open Water, middle of the ocean, there's an abyss below you, you cannot see what's below you, and anything there can drag you into an environment where you can't breathe.
Yeah.
It's pretty terrifying.
It is. And you can't just run away. You can't just escape. You're in that creature's domain, and they've got all of the advantages and you got none. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, being powerless in general. I mean, you guys are talking about this stuff, and I'm remembering the Metallica song "Trapped Under Ice." Same stuff. It's there. So there's a powerless part to this.
Yeah, I think. Oh, that would get me. The idea of being trapped under ice, being so close to the surface and not being able to get through to it, and also cold. I hate the cold. So that just puts wet, powerless, can't breathe, cold, all my least favorite things kind of in one bucket.
Oh, yay.
Definitely probably one of my least wanted ways to die, I think.
So when you were watching this stuff, did you know that you were supposed to be scared, or did you think it was supposed to be entertainment?
I think I knew that at some level it had to be entertainment, just because, Are You Afraid of the Dark was on Nickelodeon. And I was already reading stories that I knew were just stories, like the Goosebumps and the fairy tales. So I think that there was definitely an idea that this isn't real. And I think that was kind of my mantra whenever things got a little bit too scary. This isn't real. This isn't real. But I think that's the reason why Unsolved Mysteries absolutely got to me, because I couldn't fall back on this isn't real. This is real. It's a mystery and it's unsolved and nobody knows what happens. And that is terrifying. So I think that's the reason why I tend to find that distinction between the horror and the spooky, because horror, you either know it's real and it's based off a true story and here are the details and you can kind of like dig into it, or you know that it's a movie like Freddy or Jason or whatever. This is just for entertainment. There's not actually more than likely someone in a mask chasing you down to kill you. Whereas with the spooky, there's a little bit of that unknown, like, what's happening here? We don't know. That was weird. The cabinet's opened on its own, or a door shut by itself, could be the wind, could be something trying to, contact me from the other side and kill me. Who knows? I don't know.
Did you grow up north or down here? Or?
I was born and raised in Florida. So yeah, I'm one of those weird people that actually, live here.
Well, the reason I ask is when Chris and I interviewed each other, I grew up north, and we had central heat and air up there. And I don't know if you ever had the experience as a kid down here, but when the AC would kick on, the door would move a little bit. Mm-hmm. The bed, like my bedroom door, and so I would lay in bed and I'd watch the door kind of click, move, and you're like, okay, what's that? Because you don't know. But yeah, I thought the way you talked about doors moving, I thought maybe you'd had a similar experience.
Well, we did grow up in an older house that definitely had its moments. There would be, if you had certain doors open in the house, it would cause, the air draft and the air currents to come around and shut doors or open doors on its own. And I learned this the hard way, because it'd be, so many experiences of a door slamming shut and there's no one else in the house but you. So who slammed the door? And, you get those goosebumps and you're on edge and you're ready to go and like figure this out. But I think this is also what led me to need to kind of figure out what's going on, because I remember my dad kind of showing me like, this is how this works. It's because this door is open here. This is where the air is coming from. That's what's making this open. And so I'd be able to kind of test it. And now, going forward from that point in time, I would kind of have that question in the back of my mind. Is this something that's actually a weird thing that's happening, or can I figure out what made this happen? Ghost.
Yes. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, we have a attic that even after being here for 10 years, we haven't actually gone up into. We keep saying we're going to, and we haven't. I'm like, what's going to happen? Just the moment we get up there, we're going to realize that there's some guy that's been living in the attic this entire time, and we had no idea. And all the weird noises you hear on the roof is the man upstairs in the attic walking around. So now anytime we hear any kind of noise on the roof, we're like, the man upstairs.
Have you given him a name?
No, I don't know. Like, I never even thought about actually naming him. I think part of the fun for me is a mystery.
And then just like yell up at him.
Yeah, but like, can you please be quiet, John?
God damn it, Frank.
I have to come up there, Kevin, I swear.
So did you dress up for Halloween as a child?
As a child? Oh, yeah. So when I was younger, when my parents were married, they were actually Jehovah's Witnesses. So I had no idea really about any kind of holidays up until I was 6. Okay. That's when my mother had left, and my dad, it was just us kids and everything. And he ended up remarrying to a Catholic woman. Mm-hmm. So that was very much a jump in religious experiences for me as a kid, going from Jehovah's Witness to Catholic. But once he did remarry, of course, their family very much were into the Halloween and the Christmas and the Easter, and it was just quite the experience to go through the year and realize that there's these celebrations that we have each year that are fun and not boring. That's sort of interesting
because I mean the whole jumping from one religion to another is a completely different podcast, but but having that kind of an experience, I could see how that would make you appreciate all holidays, including this one.
Yeah, because it's, I remember looking for Easter eggs and I thinking to myself, this is so much fun just running around and looking for brightly colored eggs. Like, why don't we do this all the time? How come we haven't done this before? And of course, just the experience of going to the religious institute of choice, at the Kingdom Halls for the Jehovah's Witnesses, they're all there's no color. It's usually very bland colors. There's nothing on the walls. There's no pictures. And then I'd walk into a Catholic church and there'd be this gigantic Jesus on a cross. And that was scarring to see.
Well, yeah, no kidding. I didn't ever think about that.
And I will say, like, just seeing the glass windows and how pretty they were, that's like, at least I had something to look at and kind of enjoy. But yeah, so when Halloween came around and they're like, yeah, this is a holiday in which we dress up and you go out and ask people for candy and they give it to you. My mind was blown. I was just like, whatever this is, it was made for me and I was made for it and I need it. So yeah, my birthday's at the end of August. So I would start planning out what I was going to wear in August.
Now it all comes together. See, that's actually a good point. Like for me, my birthday is at the end of November. So I love Thanksgiving.
I see. Because that's right around your birthday. You get a little bit of, Thanksgiving feast as well as birthday.
Well, not just the feast, but, the fact that, family comes over. And when I lived in Chicago as a kid, with my dad's side of the family, it was not just my dad. It was his mother, my grandmother. She had 4 siblings and they all had at least 2 or 3 kids and some grandkids. So we had a big family. And so the whole family would get together for Thanksgiving. And of course, everybody would, if they didn't have a present, they'd at least say happy birthday to me. And so,
and plus you probably get oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, so it makes perfect sense that you really enjoyed Halloween because that's right around your birthday.
Well, it was a few months out, but it was almost like August, a way to break up.
I'm sorry, you're right, because it's August and then September and then October. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because I would get to August and, keep in mind, coming up in a mindset that really didn't acknowledge birthdays or celebrations or any kind of fun stuff like that. To me, August and October were very close together because every other holiday that I'd seen were very far apart. Yeah, and it gave me something to look forward to. It's like, okay, I've got August, and that's my birthday. And then as soon as I get past my birthday, then I've got 2 months in which I need to get to work and figure out what I'm going to be for Halloween. So it was almost like the start of like the winter holidays. And the excitement that comes with the changing of the seasons as much as you can get in Florida. But
that's kind of funny because now I'm also thinking like the whole reason that historically societies celebrated the winter solstice was because that was the middle point of the winter, and you're now celebrating the return towards life. And it's kind of funny because you're celebrating the second half of the year where you're approaching, the longer part of the winter.
There was always something very exciting to me.
Halloween.
Yeah, because the idea that it would get darker earlier, and I don't know, I always got an excitement to it. And for the longest time, I thought it was just because, once it starts to get darker in the year, that's when all like the best holidays happen. That's when you get, Halloween, and you get Thanksgiving, and then you get Christmas, and then New Year's. And at least in school with Valentine's Day, I was never much of a Valentine's person, but you'd at least get chocolates and stuff. So it was like a whole stretch of cool events that happened nearly every month. And I always thought that was the reason why I'd get excited that time of year. But as I get older and I'm kind of reverting back to the not so much into overly celebrating holidays every single time. I think it's just that I'm excited that it's getting dark again. I really love it when it gets dark.
So Chris, one of the other reasons that Chris is a good fit for, or a good pairing with me on this is Chris is more of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Costume. What the hell is the word I'm looking for?
Cosplay aficionado.
Thank you. So Chris, why don't you take the costume questions?
All right, well, I don't know how much of the Halloween section I missed, but as far as like Halloween costumes when you were a kid, did you have like a favorite or a least favorite Halloween costume?
Yeah, as a kid, I was say that I'd get excited at my birthday because it was for me in my head the start of planning for Halloween because I'd have 2 months to get there, and I would go through, I don't even know how many different ideas for costumes by the time I finally ended up on Halloween night. And I had this weird thing where I had to be something like different. I couldn't just be, a princess like everyone else, or a fairy like everyone. I had to have some kind of different thing to it. So when people asked me, they'd be so impressed with how much time and effort I put into this. And of course, no one really was, but when you're a kid, that's how you think.
Right. Like you spend 6 months and lots of time and effort making this awesome costume. It's individual, and people are like, "Oh, are you a Ninja Turtle?"
You're like echoing just so many Halloweens from my childhood. Are you a fairy? No, I'm a sprite. There's a difference. Okay.
Right? No, goddammit, I'm Una from Legend, the sprite that tricked Tom Cruise. Duh.
Can you not recognize this?
Have you never seen the movie?
And it was just kind of one of those things where, you realize that people don't get as into it as you do. And then you start thinking, maybe you're a little bit strange until you find your people who are also...
I was just thinking to myself, did you have anybody, did anybody actually pick up on one of your costumes when you were a kid? Did you find somebody at that age?
I think a lot of people just kind of knew that I was a little bit odd and I enjoyed fantasy. I loved escaping into my own imagination. My parents were thankfully very tolerant of my strange requests for Halloween costumes. But what kind of gets me, and I'm kicking myself now as an adult, I have a twin brother. And I looked at him and I was like, we went through how many Halloweens together and we never did a twin costume. We could have been Han and, I'm sorry, not Han, but Luke and Leia. We could have been, and he never wanted to do that. He was always, for as much as I'm into the fun dress up stuff, he very much wasn't. So
did you have a favorite costume?
My favorite costume was always the one that I was working on. I'm trying to think if there was anything that I was particularly proud of. And it's kind of hard because I also had the tradition of after spending 2 months thinking about what I wanted to be and finally getting dressed up and being excited about like my props and everything. Within minutes, I would trip and tear the stockings and walk down with bleeding legs and bleeding knees. So I learned pretty quick not to get attached to anything because I was going to end up destroying it at some point. I do think, I think for the costumes, I had decided to be a sprite, and I just thought that was the most clever thing in the world because it wasn't a fairy. It was a sprite. There's a difference. And I was sure that just everyone would be intrigued by this and want to know more. And of course I didn't. Everyone just assumed I was a fairy. And you don't look like soda. Look, okay?
See, on one hand, I was thinking to myself of asking the question, so for our listeners who don't know, would you like to explain? But it sounds like you've been traumatized by having to explain it so many times that maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, it just got to the point where I just said, it's a type of fairy, sure. It's a... like, and I was a little surprised with how much emotions this is bringing up. Because like I said, I just thought it was the most clever thing in the world because I've read a lot of fairy tales and stuff and just thought to myself, you know, I'm going to be able to tell people all about this and how cool this creature is. And no one cared. Not a single person. Oh.
So speaking of emotions, were there any times where you were actually terrified of something as a child?
As a kid, I remember the occasional, like, not wanting the lights to be turned off. But again, like I said, they would come and go quickly. I'm trying to think if there was anything that was like legitimately, I had a weird phobia of like talking on the phone. I did not like the idea of answering the phone and being like the person that had to like respond to the person on the other end because I had no idea what it was that they would be asking. So that was a weird phobia, but that's, I think, the closest I can get because like I had a fear of dogs when I was little for a little bit, and then I got bit by a dog and realized, oh, this dog, my favorite shirt is ripped up and I'm bleeding and I'm quite literally scarred for life, but that was the worst of it. And I think that experience made me realize that if there's something scary, maybe just face it. And, you know, it might not be as bad as you think it is.
Interesting takeaway.
Which it might be why I didn't shy away from the scary movies and the scary stories, and why it was actually a little bit exciting because, you know, why let this thing own your life and make you not want to do something?
How old were you when you got bitten?
6. I think I was 6. Young. Yeah, I was pretty young. And it was my fault because there was, the dogs in the yard and I was a little kid and I saw the dog and I decided, you know what is a good idea? Let's run. Let's just turn around and book it. And of course, dogs do what dogs do when they see something tiny running. It ran after me. So, yeah.
Did you have any scary dreams when you were a kid?
I used to always dream about being chased by something.
Like dogs?
Maybe it could have been a dog.
You never got chased around the kitchen by a wolf, did you?
Chris, not that I can remember.
That was one of Chris's dreams when he was a kid.
Yep. Chased by a wolf around the kitchen.
Yeah. I don't sleepwalk anymore, but I do still occasionally sleep talk. And my husband says that one time I woke up from a dead sleep and I just looked at him and I looked angry. And I was like, I apparently crossed my arms and I said, bacon, where is it? It's not here. And I made this whole gesture to show the bacon that was not here.
Where is the bacon?
Which is really funny too, because I've been a vegetarian for most of the time that he's known me. So I don't know why I was asking for bacon, but it wasn't there.
I don't know. You don't even like bacon.
That's definitely one of those inside jokes that will last a lifetime.
Yeah. We'll just occasionally look at each other if something's missing, and then we'll be like, my shoes, where are they? They're not here.
They're with the bacon.
Of course.
Wherever the bacon is, that's where the shoes are.
So when Chris and I were interviewing each other, we mentioned earlier a few minutes ago that we have some questions in here that we didn't think applied to us, but we figured might apply to someone else. And the next question here is, did horror in your childhood make you happy? And it sounds like yes, it did. You actually enjoyed some horror or spooky, if you prefer, elements as a child, which is cool.
Yeah, and I think if nothing else, it was intriguing, and I wanted to know more. And like I said, like I do remember like certain scary movies scaring me, but for the most part, I was drawn to it instantly.
Cool. So what about teenage years? What were the bigger influences or most memorable horror related stuff in your teenage years?
I think X-Files is definitely one of them. Oh God, I loved X-Files. I was obsessed. I think I got into the Fear Street books right after the Goosebumps books. And I do remember actually being scared of one of them. I can't remember which one. But yeah, I remember one of them actually, like, it was the first time like a story, like a book that I'd read kind of gave me a moment of, oh my God, that was scary. Mm-hmm. I tried getting into Stephen King, and didn't really fall into it as much as I did some of the other medias, which is too bad because I read it a little bit more now, and I'm like, I could have seen how this would have been both something I would have been into and not. But I'd have other people talk about how scared they were reading Stephen King. I'm like, yeah, really? Like, okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, nothing against him or anything, just I guess the way that my mind takes in words and the way that he forms words, it didn't quite hit the same way, except there was a short story about frogs raining down from the sky and eating a couple that came through. And I guess every year or every so many years, there was always a man and a woman that came through this town. And this is when the frogs would rain down and the frogs would eat this couple. I'm like, okay, that is legitimately scary.
Yeah. What was it that scared you?
I think probably what came it down to, they never explained why it was that there was this storm of toads that was coming down, and that they had to eat a couple, and that this couple always came through is always a man and a woman, whether they were, like romantically linked or otherwise. It just made me want to know like more about why, like what is it, what triggers this response, and since it was never really answered, or at least that I can remember, it still always kind of stuck with me, like why? But explain it to me.
Yeah, I agree. Why?
And then the idea of being eaten, I think any person would have some kind of deterrent toward being eaten by another animal, which I guess we could throw in there. Like, I've always had a little bit of a thing about alligators, because they can eat you.
Yes, they can.
And I think just the idea of these frogs, I wouldn't say that I was necessarily scared of toads, but, when you read so many fairy tales about toads and being turned into them, and then having another story about toads eating people, it
kind of flips the script a little bit.
Don't mess with toads. Just don't mess with them.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I gotta come back on this. So, how exactly did the toads eat the people? Like, I mean, was it a large toad big enough to consume a person, or was it like a mass of toads that ate them, like swallowed?
Yeah, and I could be remembering the story wrong, but from what I remember, it was like a rain of frogs and a flood of frogs or toads. I think it was toads, and they would stop at nothing to get through to the victims, and then swarm them and eat them. And I'm like,
they gummed them to death.
Nope, do not eat that.
Yes, ambiguity, every writer's crutch.
Yeah. Yeah, ambiguity, I think, just really, it gets me when I don't know something. Like, as soon as I know the answer, it takes away the mystery. Yeah.
Okay. So X-Files, Fear Street, the Stephen King story, any other memorable thing from teenage years that's horror related?
I'd start I got more into like horror things. But I think the reason why I'm having a little bit of trouble finding examples is that specific question of anything that scared you. And because I wasn't, I mean, sure, there were scared feelings with some of this, but a lot of times it would come with intrigue too. So we'll have to go with the alligators.
Let's change the question. What was there anything related to the horror industry that excited you during the teenage years specifically?
I liked how the stories were told because, having grown up reading the fairy tales in which there was a definite kind of beat and rhythm and flow to these stories, and I loved them. And then when, my dad remarried, my stepmom was really into Disney. And, I realized that there's a very big difference between those fairy tales and what I knew as fairy tales. So I felt like for a while, a lot of the stories being told to me were very much geared toward kids. And it had that sanitized, washed out kind of flavor to it. So when I got into my teenage years and I discovered scary movies and I discovered like horror in general, the way that it was presented and the way that it was set up, where you're not spoon fed everything immediately, it's dragged out a little bit. That I think, again, it comes down to that, I need to know, I want to know, like, I'm stuck here until you explain to me what's going on here. And I think that's kind of what drew me, is just that they didn't shy away from a bad thing happening. They didn't shy away from, the grittier side of life. Mm-hmm. And that was refreshing after, Disney movies.
Okay. So like the twists and turns and the storytelling technique.
Yeah.
Cool. So you had commented earlier about finding your people. Did that happen in your teenage years or later?
I think it was a little bit later. Okay. Certainly, in high school and everything, I had friends that had similarities. But I think I felt pretty lost, like most teenagers do, for a really long time. Nothing seemed to fit. And for a long time, I thought that just maybe, life wasn't all that interesting. And I was prepared to buckle up and wait for another 80 years of kind of mediocrity, I guess. Because, like I said, just as a teenager, it took a while before I started finding really things that grabbed me. And, it was a lot harder for me to explore that until I got a little bit older and I got on my own and was able to start digging in. Because, keep in mind, I had a lot of siblings. So being able for my parents to adjust to one kid's specific interest is very difficult. They had to find entertainment that would, keep 7 kids happy. And so a lot of the music that my mom would listen to going to and from work was, top whatever. And then when we'd get movies for the weekend, it was usually family-friendly movies, not out of any kind of, I don't want my kids to see this, but just out of, the oldest one's a teenager, the youngest one's a kid. What can we watch all together?
Right. Okay. And that's fine. Like we said, some of these questions are geared towards, the eventuality that maybe somebody might have a reason to go into this. And so if you didn't have your crew in high school, for example, or teenage years, then we just don't need to go into it. That's fine.
Yeah.
So how about Halloween in your teens? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I was still dressing up and all the way throughout the entirety of high school. I did not care if people thought, it was a kiddie thing to do or not. If for whatever reason they're like, yeah, you probably shouldn't go trick-or-treating. You're 25. Yeah, I think you can stop now.
Hell no.
Like, don't you guys know they're giving out free candy out there?
Like, and they're giving it away by the handfuls. Did you see my load last year? It was an entire pillowcase full of candy. But
so any specifically memorable events or costumes
or candy?
I remember going to like Halloween parties, and Halloween, like it was geared toward like teenagers. And I had, for my first job that I'd gotten in, like, when I was 15, 16, my very first paycheck, I bought this velvet white gown from Hot Topic. And so that was my my Halloween outfit for like, I think 2 or 3 years running, where normally I would not want to wear the same costume twice. I was like, how can I make this one dress into more than one thing? So I think I was like the undead bride or something one year. And then I was a ghost. And then I was a vampire. And just, I don't know, I just took this one piece and kept reinventing it. And, you know, granted, they weren't all that exciting because I was still a teenager. I was still, you know, limited by however much minimum wage was back then. But it kind of taught me how to play with creativity, you know, that you don't have to do something completely different every single time. You can try something new.
Any least favorite costumes? Just ones that didn't work out?
Yeah, it was just ones that people didn't immediately fawn over and say, oh my God, you're a genius. This is beautiful and great. Which, you know, was more than I'd like to admit. But, you know, if I put my time and effort into a costume, typically it was something I was really excited about. So there wasn't too many that I was like, oh, I get to be this. Yay. I enjoyed slipping into a new character each time. I really enjoyed the freedom that came with playing dress up, and the idea that people give you candy for it on top of it. It's hard to have a bad memory and a bad costume with that mindset.
Yeah. And I can also see a connection between you being an aspiring author and, like you say, you know, getting into a new character and the storytelling part of it. So it's not just the horror aspect, it's also the storytelling, as you say.
It very much is.
Did you have any, was there anything you were like terrified of as a teenager?
I'm trying to think because, you know, I was definitely, I lacked a lot of confidence as a teenager because I'm a teenager. I think most teenagers struggle with that. And I had like a legitimate like phobia for a little bit, again, of like talking on the phone where just I kind of like freeze up and not want to do that.
Any scary dreams? Sorry, you were going to say something?
I was trying to think of like scary things like teenage wise. I did have a boyfriend that claimed he had a haunted house. And of course I didn't believe him at first. But there was one experience that to this day, no matter how much I try to break it down, I'm not entirely sure what it was. He told us the story of the couple that lived there before, the husband, you know, trigger warning for anyone about abuse, but the husband was abusive, and according to the story he told me, the husband had kept the wife inside, would not let her go outside. Sometimes he'd lock her into the closet, you know, and beat her, unfortunately. And then one day he ended up actually murdering her and hid her in what used to be a fireplace and now was just this weird alcove. And I always thought that area in the house was a little bit odd, just like the way that it was shaped. But I was like, okay, well, he's just trying to scare me. And, you know, good luck with that, buddy. But we were sitting there one day and we're in his room and I hear in the room next to us, like this banging. And I start giggling and I'm like, is your roommate home? Is she having sex with her boyfriend right now? Because I don't know if she knows this, but we can hear her. And his eyes get huge and he looks at me. He goes, she's not home. She's been staying the night with her boyfriend for the last week. And then as he's saying this, that banging just keeps happening. And like, there's like a rattling noise and it just keeps getting louder and louder and more frantic. And I think that was what really got me, was that what started off was a boom, boom, boom. And then the longer it happened, the more frantic it got. And it was boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, time to go.
Okay.
It's time to go.
Let's go investigate.
No.
So we very slowly, very quietly opened the door, and I can see the closet that was kind of like on the other side of his room, but was in her room, rattling. And it was definitely 100% that door because I saw it moving. And we kind of opened it a little bit more to see if we could get a better idea of what was going on. His cat, who was like at the door trying to get out, raced out of the house. We did not see that cat for like a good week. The thing would not come back to the house. And then the door stops and I open it and there's nothing in there. And I'm like, all right, time to go. All right, come on.
Yep.
Let's go. I'm not coming back here.
It's time
This
to
is
go.
fun. Yeah. Oh, it was the only time that I really had a situation that I couldn't explain, and that was like scary. But he's like, don't worry. She's a friendly ghost. She doesn't like men, but you're fine. I'm like, okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that was fun.
Shit happens and you can't explain it. So
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, even though I really enjoy these types of stories, and even though I technically got one of my own, I don't necessarily believe in ghosts. I don't necessarily believe in a lot of things that people would attribute it to, demons or whatever. But I do think that there's certain things about this world that we may not necessarily understand or know exists. And that plays right into the things that usually get me, which is unexplained, mysterious, you don't know the answer. So, whether or not it was legitimately the spirit of a deceased person that is, either grabbing your leg or banging on a closet door, or if it's something else, point is, I don't know what the answer is.
Right.
And I don't like that. I would like to know the answer, please.
Exactly. So, as far as general or specific things about horror in this portion of your life that thrilled you or made you excited, it sounds like the common themes are the storytelling and the unknown.
Yes, very much. And I don't think that this would have been something I would have put together myself unless, you had requested for me to come and be on this. So thank you so much for that, because it really gave me some time to deep dive into, the things that have intrigued me growing up and to kind of notice these patterns. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of what the show is about.
Yep. Yeah.
And
So-
it means I know more, and I like knowing things.
The more you know.
So, moving into adult now, last of the three stages, what are some of the scariest stories or books or movies or horror or spooky related stuff that you have experienced in the adult world?
So I think following like the media aspect of it, or the entertainment aspect, and I'm not even sure if this is something that I should be embarrassed by or not, because I've never really talked to anyone else to see how other people reacted to this. But I don't know if you guys watch Marble Hornets back in the day on YouTube, or have you ever heard of it?
Like Marvel comic books, or Marble like the stone?
Like the stone.
Marble Hornets?
So, yeah, it was this YouTube, like this is like back in like 2009. So like YouTube was still pretty new. And yeah, I hate that it's so long ago, but I was doing a little bit of research on it because, I was trying to remember, like, was this something that just was the moment, or was I legitimately scared of it? And, oh my God, that thing scared me so much because it was Slender Man. Back when Slender Man was like pretty, new, and there was still a lot of the lore being built around him, and it was like student made. So people around my age at the time, that they were making a movie called Marble Hornet, and one of the characters in this is going through the old videotapes back, because back then we still had videotapes. Mm-hmm. But as he's going through the videotapes, he noticed that one of the characters had gone missing. He moved away. They couldn't find him, and there was weird things happening in the video. You would get like distortions and noises. Every now and then, you would see Slender Man in the background, and then as the investigation goes on, it would creep me out so much, because there'd be things just kind of right outside of your immediate notice that fans would pick up on. And this was all done mostly through like YouTube and Twitter. So the main character that was kind of like the narrator for the story, was acting as if he was a real person, real time. There's a name for it, and I'm just missing the name. It's like alternate reality stories or something, and they've gotten more popular over the years. But basically, whoever's telling the story will create real life Twitter accounts, YouTube accounts, Instagrams, whatever, and the story is kind of told in real time, and people follow along, and they break the codes in the videos in order to get like secret messages. And as I was kind of reviewing Marble Hornets to get a better recall of it, because I don't think I finished it, I was like, this stuff is seriously creepy, just so creepy, because you would see a scene where it's just them kind of chit-chatting, talking about like the next scene that they're going to film, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, Slender Man is like in the background, standing there watching.
Okay, so other than Marble Hornets, what else? Anything else that really?
I definitely had my experience of just creepy experiences, creepy encounters with actual monsters, like people that are just terrible. But I think one of the good things about being a horror fan is it teaches you to stay on your toes and to pay attention to what's going on, because there's probably clues. And I think that actually probably helped keep me from being kidnapped one time, because there was definitely someone that tried to kidnap me on my way back to my car after a night out. That was terrifying.
Yeah.
But I think just growing up in a world where your mind is always kind of trying to grab any kind of clues, most of the entertainment that I would take in would be some type of problem solving, get that information, figure it out, do it quickly, because otherwise, the antagonist of the story is going to get you. So you got your fairy tales and you got your horror movies where you got to figure out how to save the day before you're the next victim. So on this particular night, I was, I walked into the club that I was going to, and it just immediately felt something was off. And I was like, okay. And someone there, a stranger that I did not know, kept trying to give me a drink. And I'm like, yeah, nobody, that's not going to happen, but thanks. Finally, like when he did manage to quote unquote buy me a drink, I of course just tossed it down the sink, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to get out of here. Something's wrong. I don't know what. My spider senses are going. And then as I'm walking, like just that voice in your head starts almost like screaming at me, like, you need to get to your car. Don't run, but get there now. Don't stop for anything. And then just as soon as I got to my car, this other car like pulled up and parked kind of like behind me and tried to like come up to my passenger side door and get in. And of course, by that time I was already speeding off, but that's, I think, the closest thing that I've had to a real life, like I'm legitimately terrified of something. Because I think it's important to sit down with the things that you're uncomfortable with. So, when I was afraid of heights, I jumped out of a plane. When I had my fear of talking on the phone in childhood, I got a job in which I had to talk on the phone. When I was scared of talking in front of people or being in the center of attention, I joined the drama club and got into plays. And I've always enjoyed that aspect of sitting with the uncomfortable, facing your fears. But that's one experience that I have absolutely no interest in, meeting this person and breaking down that fear. I know enough. I don't need to know anymore. Stay away, please, and thank you.
Right.
Yeah, so I think, for horror, for scary, and I'm not even sure if it counts in this particular aspect, but that would do it for me.
Well, so that sounds like, because later, further down in the questions, we do ask about, is there anything that legitimately terrifies you? And that one is definitely answers that question.
Yeah.
I think, the initial question about scary stories or books or movies that you've been exposed to as an adult is more geared towards fantasy. I definitely do have questions, or we definitely do have questions that are geared towards addressing both the fantasy and the reality. I think this just goes in that other checkbox, if that makes sense. So other than Marble Hornets on the fantasy side, was there anything else that or even has interested you as a fan? Like when I did my interview, the 30 things I listed were things that I was a fan of, and for Marble Hornets, it did sound like you were a fan of that.
Yeah. So I'm definitely a fan of that kind of pacing where you're given information very slowly, and is not spoon fed to you. You kind of have to put the pieces together. You're not told something scary happened because of a loud noise. You're told something scary has happened because of something that you saw in the corner of your eye, something that moved by, that is presented in a very normal way, but is actually, honestly terrifying because there's a dude in a mask standing there or whatever. Those are the kind of things that I get drawn toward. I do still enjoy horror movies. I'll sit back and watch, Freddy or Jason or any of I actually really liked Jeepers Creepers 2. Couldn't stand 1. Loved Jeepers Creepers 2. I thought it was really funny. I love when a story combines horror and humor. There's something about the juxtapose of the two that I've got a very kind of dark humor, kind of sense of humor. So when you put those two things together that you would not think should go together, it almost makes it even better. It makes the scary things scarier, and it makes the funny things funnier because you're already in this heightened sense of experience. And I just remember with Jeepers Creepers 2, there was a part where whatever the creature is, I can't even remember what he was, but he was after one specific character, and they're all on a bus, and he's watching them from the back window, and he's pointing, and each character on the bus, because there were a bunch of school kids, or not school, like high school kids, they'd point to themselves and be like, no, not you, and kind of wave them away. And he goes down this entire line of characters, like waving them. And then he gets to the last kid. He goes, you. And his eyes just like light up. He's like, you, I'm going to eat you. And I'm like, that is both terrifying and hilarious at the same time. And I love it.
I think that's also a common thread that we're probably going to find among all horror fans is just the dark sense of humor. There's got to be some, I don't know. That's a good question that we should probably dig into as well, is why is there a common theme of horror and humor? I'll have to put that on the back burner and think about that.
I got my theories.
What are they?
Well, so, and I don't want to take this too far off topic, but
briefly,
I think that there is definitely something about being in an excited state of mind, which happens most often with things like fear. It enhances your senses in a lot of ways. It gets that voice in your head to kind of quiet down for a second instead of asking a bunch of inane questions. You just kind of go into flight or fight mode. And when going through these questions, it made me think about something else that I'd kind of stumbled across. I had read about where fetishes came from, and not just like, turn-ons, where like, oh, I like girls with blonde hair, but like legit like fetishes. This is a thing that does it for me, always, instant, yes. And there was a theory going that it came from fears because you're already in that excited kind of sense of mind. So any emotions you experience in that mind frame, of course, are heightened. So the examples I gave is, if you have a fear of, let's say, police or authority or whatever, you probably also have a fetish regarding uniforms. If you have a fear of going to the doctor, going to the dentist, you probably have, a doctor fetish. And these, of course, are very kind of surface things. I won't go too far into examples, but it made me realize, they got a really good point, whether or not it's true. When you are in that fight or flight mode, you feel everything more intensely.
I do think there is something there. Touching on two things that you brought up. For me, the connection there is two things: shock and subverting expectations.
Yeah.
Humor is all about setting one thing up and then giving you something else, and subverting that expectation. And if there's a shock associated with it, that's even better, quite often, because that accentuates not only is it subverted, but subverted that much more. And the thing with the fetish, for me, my experience with it has been that, for me, I believe, not just fetish, but even vanilla sex is about crossing boundaries. And what's the word I'm looking for? Consensually. Even consensual. If you just even take the most vanilla thing that you can think of, where, very conservative Christian missionary position stuff, even that can be thrilling to them, because for those people in that mindset, to them, they are crossing a boundary. They're doing something that they say to themselves, we're not supposed to be doing this unless we're married, unless we cross all these check boxes that say that we can do this. And if we didn't have all these check boxes, we shouldn't be doing this. And that is enough for them. Now, there are other people who that's not enough for them, and they have particular boundaries that they like to cross, but it's that the thrill of coming up to the boundary and then the crossing of it. In my interview, I referenced a quote that talks about, I can't remember if it's Arabic or Buddhist, but there's a quote about the angel of death, that when the angel of death approaches, it's terrifying, but once they're here, it's bliss. Like, there's something about the crossing of the boundary. The tension builds and then releases. Anyway, well off topic.
No, because I think that's very much correct. I think you got a few different things going on there. Is, that this is a thing we shouldn't be doing. This is, scary. This is different. This is a boundary. I'd mentioned that when I was afraid of heights, I decided to jump out of a plane. And I remember when I did that, I was sitting in the office waiting for all the forms to be filled out before I got my chance to go skydiving. And as I'm filling out this form, of course, I'm really nervous. I'm about to pay someone a lot of money to take me up into a plane and then jump out. But I saw this picture of a guy. When you jump your first time, you always do a tandem. You're not allowed to just jump on your own, because people die. And he's strapped to the tandem instructor, and the instructor has just this look of pure bliss and happiness as they're jumping out of the plane. He just, is so excited. And the client looks just absolutely terrified. His face is just like, you couldn't get a more characteristic look of terror. And he had signed it. You were right. This really was the worst part. I enjoyed every second of it. I can't wait to do it again, or something like that. And that's what everyone had said, is like, the scariest part is that first moment when you leave the plane. But if you can get past that part, which you kind of don't have a choice, if you can get past that part, you're fine. So sure enough, when I went up, I remember looking down and seeing how far up we were, and it was terrifying. And the jerk decided, hey, let's do a somersault out so you could see the plane falling away from you. And like, my heart stopped and I'm freaking out. And the moment I was in it, as soon as those first few seconds passed, oh my God, it was almost peaceful. Like, it was a great moment, and I absolutely loved it. And haven't done it since, but I would absolutely. And it's that matter of a boundary. We're afraid of the unknown. For me, I've very much learned, if I'm going to be scared of something, it probably has something to do with not knowing all the factors. As soon as I know all the factors, I'm fine with it. I'm comfortable with it. Even if I don't necessarily like it, I've got the factors. And that's very much what you get with fear, with horror, with sex. A lot of times, particularly as a teenager, when you're new to it, it's scary. And then you enter into something wonderful, hopefully, consentingly.
Yeah. A lot of stuff there. And emotional for me as well. Like just listening to you going through it is making me emotional too. So during your adult years, were there any fears that you hadn't had before that came in, or maybe ones that you had from an earlier time that got re-triggered? Other than, I mean, we've already talked about the kidnapping, but anything else?
Yeah. When I was, I'd say about 6 years old, everything happens when you're 6, apparently. I had this big, huge palmetto bug fly in my hair and I could not get it out. And, that was not pleasant.
Nice.
And I thought for the most part that I handled that fear because I can catch roaches and I can release them. I don't like it. I can do it. I don't like killing things. It's not my, except for mosquitoes. I will absolutely murder some mosquitoes. But pretty much anything else, I'm catch and release. But we had some construction going on in the house recently. And of course, when it comes to construction, people have doors open. You get people coming in and out. And of course, we had bugs that we had to catch and release. And I learned that there's only so much of it I can take. I got to the point where I was like, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. If I see one thing move again, I'm going to freak out. And we definitely paid to have someone come and just absolutely spray the crap out of the house, because I got to the point where I was sure I was seeing things move. Like, and anytime I turned around, something else was moving. I was like, no, it's a paper. Okay, it's fine. Oh no, it's the dog. It's fine. Oh no, that's me. Okay. Whew.
Yeah, I can completely understand what you're saying, because when I lived in New Jersey, there was an apartment building that I lived in that there was a store on the first, or actually a restaurant on the first floor, and then 5 or 6 apartments above and behind it. And it had a super bad roach infestation that was so bad that, normally when you come into a room and like you flick on the light and there are roaches, they run. These fuckers wouldn't even run. They were just like, hi, you're home. Like,
need anything?
Yeah. Would you bring us? Like multiple of them, like 5 or 10 of them per room. Like it just, whoa. Oh. And to this day, if I see something that looks like a bug in the corner of my eye, I will turn and look at it. Like I have a mark on my floor in my kitchen from when I moved the refrigerator and one of the feet caught the linoleum and pulled it. And it just bugs the shit out of me now, because almost daily I'll walk through the kitchen and I'll see this little mark on the floor and I have to turn and look at it. And I know it's not a fucking roach. It's just a scratch in the floor. But anyway, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. That was definitely my life for a little bit there, where if a leaf came in, just, tracking leaves in from outside, and it would just be laying there and have a little heart attack and see it, and no, it's fine. And that's the funny thing, is like they're just bugs. They're not going to hurt you. They're not going to do anything. They're not even like, I don't even think they carry any kind of disease or anything. I could be wrong. Who knows? I don't want to find out. Don't tell me that they do, because that will just make it worse.
So you had commented about finding your people in your adult years. We haven't talked about that yet. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the city I'm in, very diverse group of people, and it's something I really, really enjoy. So when I came across the club that I come to the most, when I go out and go to clubs, I definitely found the type of people that are into similar things. People that would get excited about things like dressing up as a Sprite for Halloween and would know what it was and the difference, dang it. So it was really fun to find a group of people that didn't blink twice at, hey, let's dress up, let's wear cloaks and tiaras and wings and, fangs and claws, and sure, throw it all on and add some glitter on top. And of course, from there, I was able to find people that were into similar types of entertainment. We have the horror convention every year in Florida, Spooky. And, that was the first time I realized, like, even if I don't specifically gravitate towards horror in the general sense where it's, like, again, and I know I'm just going back to the classics again, but like Jason, Freddy, the fandom is just a great group of people. Yeah, they're good people. And I have a theory about that. When you get these people that dress up weird and you get these people that are into weird things like horror or, investigating crimes and serial killers and all that, you see the weirdest part of them kind of up front. Here it is. These are the weird things I'm into. Whereas other people, they kind of keep their stuff under wraps. And so you don't know just how deep that well goes in their mind. You get a better idea with people that kind of wear it on their sleeves. And I think that's one of the reasons why you just don't get, at least for me, my experience is that I don't get a lot of truly out there people, whereas some of the most normal people, looking people, have also been the weirdest and caused more trouble.
I think from my perspective, I always try to err on the side of caution and qualify my statements. So, I won't say that there aren't weird people in the horror community as well. I mean, there are weird people everywhere. But I think what I would agree with is that in the horror community, I think the best analogy I can make is to say that more of the iceberg is visible than not visible, if that makes sense.
I think that's an excellent way to put that. I think, because again, you're right. You can certainly say generals, but generals are not the entire picture. Yeah. And while I've had a much more sense of comfort around horror people, you will still get your handfuls. There's always an exception to the rule, no matter what group you're looking at. And I think that's a beautiful way to put it, is you just see more of the iceberg. You get a better sense of what you're looking at.
So how about Halloween as an adult? I know you've said that you've participated in this throughout your life. Any specific memories as an adult of best costumes or best events, positive memories, negative memories?
I think as an adult, I don't want to say like the interest has waned, because that's certainly not it by any means. It's just a little bit harder to get involved, because a lot of times, all right, well, I'm working on Halloween, so getting dressed up is a little bit more difficult. And certainly to the levels that I used to enjoy doing it. Now I kind of have to delegate it toward, when I go to Spooky each year, those are the times when I'll put the time and effort into getting dressed up. I certainly don't plan as much as I used to, what I'm going to be this Halloween, but I still absolutely enjoy every aspect of a holiday. And I remember being really excited the first Halloween that I got my house, because it meant that I got to be the person on the other side of the door giving out candy. I was so excited. And like, I had almost forgot to do the most important part, which was go buy the candy.
I thought you were going to say turn on the light.
Well, that too. But no, so it's like, I don't know. It must have been like 6 or 7 at night. So it's already kind of getting into full. And I had no idea like how long it went, because as a kid, you just went when it was dark and that was it. Mm-hmm. But I ran to the store and I grabbed a bunch of candy, and I didn't even think about it on my way back. I was like, honey, roll down the window. I'm going to tell these kids that they can come to my house for candy. So I'm screaming out the window, I got candy, kids, come to my house.
Oh.
And then I wonder why I don't get any trick-or-treaters ever.
Just out of curiosity, please tell me you weren't in a white panel van.
I was not, no.
Okay,
no, it was a black Magnum, actually, but
just checking.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever live that one down, but yeah.
Totally dead serious, too.
I was so excited. Come on, kids. Come to my house.
Show me your costumes.
So I definitely am more excited now about, passing on that magic to the kids, coming up to the door now. I don't have the same urge to go out and do the trick-or-treating like I did at the bright young age of 27, but I do like the part where I get to wait for the kids to come and seeing all the different costumes and seeing how excited they are. And my only, regret is that I think in the world that we live in, a lot of people, they don't trick or treat the same way that we did as kids.
Mhm.
So instead of getting hordes of kids like we should, the neighborhood I'm in, there should be plenty of kids to come by. Will only get a smattering here and there because most people are taking them somewhere like the mall or something.
I was just going to say, it's just not the same.
Yeah. And it makes me really sad because I love that moment when the door rings and I get to see everyone and, I like it.
I just had an image of, if you ever have kids, they're probably going to hate Halloween and be bored with it just to be different.
Yep.
Probably. My dad says that they'll end up being like jocks and cheerleaders just to spite me.
My mom is so lame.
Oh my God. You can come over to my house, but don't ask my mom about the skulls laying around the kitchen. She gets really excited about it, and you'll never get her to shut up.
Just go straight to my room.
Yeah, don't make eye contact. Hey kids, you want to see this bloody finger?
Where are you going?
Oh God.
What's that body in the closet? Don't ask. Just keep going.
Don't worry about it.
It's not a real body. Just go. Any nightmares or really scary dreams as an adult?
Yeah.
I think I was in the woods on a stagecoach. Whatever time period this was in my dream, I don't think it was modern. I think it was I don't know, horse and buggy days, which is a weird thing to dream about.
Mm-hmm.
But there was someone also in a carriage chasing us. And I remember having this fear, oh my God, something bad's going to happen. And then right after that, the person chasing us fell and had their eye gouged out by a deer antler that was in the way or something. And it was very realistic. And I thought it was odd because, usually I don't get very gory dreams. I've got nothing against gore. My dad's a OR tech, so we'd go to take your kid to work day and see inside of people. And it was like, oh, that's neat. That's
nice.
There's a dude's stomach. Gore doesn't get me, but I remember just how very realistic this dream was about this eye being gouged out. And I was like, okay, put that in the vault. As intense as that moment is, I think that's one of the most important things about horror, because fear is a very important thing. Fear is what keeps us alive. Your brain and body can do a lot of amazing things when you let it just go and keep you safe. Mm-hmm. And it teaches you how to listen, how to take in information around you, which keeps you sharp and on your toes and ready for whatever predator, whether it be a saber-toothed tiger from our long ago days, or if it's, someone trying to rob you or kidnap you or whatever. That's what horror does. It teaches you how to respond and react and be ready. Yeah. And that's a nice, safe way to do it. Just, watch, zombies rip into a person that's still alive. As one does.
As one does.
So the next couple questions, looking back over your entire life, not just adulthood, what movie would you say you've watched more times than any other? And it doesn't have to be horror related.
See, and that's hard because I don't tend to go back on a lot of movies. I don't revisit them very often. I almost want the story to kind of be forgotten a little bit so that I can almost experience again as new. So I think the most often one, it would be things like probably Labyrinth.
Classic.
Because you get that spooky kind of, the puppets and the creepy little goblins and David Bowie. And I'm trying to think if there's anything recent. There is a movie, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, that I actually went out and bought. And I don't typically buy movies because, again, I need to almost forget the movie in order to enjoy it again. Oh, it is killing me.
Describe it. Chris probably knows it.
I will do it.
I think it's called The Fall, because it's about a guy that
involve a guy who jumped off of a bridge on a horse and he hurt his leg, and then there was a little that was The Fall by Tarsem.
Yes, that's the one.
Same director as The Cell.
This is why Chris is my co-host.
That is impressive. I am super impressed.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a great movie. That was beautiful.
It is so
everything
gorgeous.
he does, and he really likes that desert with the white sand and the orange sand in Africa.
Apparently.
This is why Chris is my co-host.
He can keep it. Yeah. Chris, I'm super impressed because I'm like, how do I describe this when I can only remember parts of it? Because obviously it's been long enough that maybe I should watch it again.
You said the title.
But I love how, as he's telling the story, it's clearly the little girl's kind of imagination, because reality will slip into her imagination, and it's adorable, and I love it.
Oh yeah, she is just the best part of the whole movie. I watched the making of, and they say how all the scenes with her lines and everything totally ad-libbed. They didn't give her any lines. They told her to say something, and she just said it with the wonderment and the innocence of a child, and it's just that
Oh, I just loved her, because I was wondering, I was like, either she is a fantastic actress, or I don't know, because the way she would respond to people. Oh,
a little both.
I just want to hug her.
Yeah, she's adorable.
Do you see any common threads about what kind of horror or spooky stuff you like, in terms of is it cannibalism or occult or metaphysical or?
Yeah, I would definitely have to say it's that mystery, which often comes hand in hand with the occult, because that's where you see a lot of that mystery or paranormal. Yeah, but a lot of times they ruin it by telling you too much. Don't say too much, just let it go. But that's definitely one of my ongoing themes when it comes to particularly horror and spooky things, is not having all the information, having to discover it slowly, and not being fed it.
Show, don't tell.
I absolutely, it's the ultimate show, don't tell. I love it.
So the next question I have is, do you have any idea why it is that you like those things? And I guess the answer you just gave is the joy of discovery.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's more interactive and more involved if you let your audience experience it with you, because that's the thing is, there was a quote from Neil Gaiman once. Someone asked him why he always wrote stories about a plain everyday character that is, kind of put into the world of this magical place, and they don't know what to do. They don't know anything about the rules and the etiquettes, and they kind of have to stumble through it. Why do you keep writing stories like that? And he's like, well, isn't that kind of what we all do? We come into this world, we don't know anything about it, kind of have to stumble our way through it and figure it out. And I think when I go through these pieces of entertainment that does that, where you find out what's going on with the characters, it invokes something in me that just, it feels more realistic, even if it is something improbable, like the Slender Man standing outside the window. It taps into that feeling of, I don't know what's going on, I don't understand, but I'm going to find a way that I will get the answers. And I think that's so much more realistic in my head than I've got this guy who's got mother issues chasing me down. Should probably run away from him.
Okay, so before I ask the last question, let me kind of summarize what I think I'm hearing are the common things to this point. The things I'm hearing are joy in discovery, strength in discovery, and strength and control in discovery and preparation for the unknown. Like, you don't like not knowing, you like knowing. Does it sound accurate to you that you find some strength in that ability to then know and be prepared for things? Does it, or am I, or do it? I mean, and if I'm off base, tell me.
No, I think you really kind of nailed it, because, even kind of looking back at things I said in this conversation, I was saying that, one of the gifts of horror is it gives you safe space to explore some pretty unusual situations that hopefully you'll never find yourself in. But it gives you a chance to kind of prepare. What would I do if, the zombie apocalypse happens. Like, how many people have a legit plan for the zombie apocalypse? Something that will likely never happen, but they still have a plan.
If you could see Chris right now, I'm sure he's raising his hand.
I have no less than 2 bug out bags.
Smart, very smart. And that's the thing, is even if it's not the zombie apocalypse, who's to say that there isn't some other situation that will make those bug out bags very important, very needed, and give you an advantage in whatever situation you find yourself in.
Like, per se, the stupid apocalypse.
Yeah.
I guess that's already been happening, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's sort of the last question. So when we think about all these things that you've shared that you would like, the joy of the discovery, the strength and control, and the mastery of a situation, the preparation, but why horror? So, and the reason I say that is, for example, knowledge, joy, and discovery. You could find that in science, reading about science. But what do you think? There's something about the horror genre that you like in relation to those things?
Yeah, I think. Because, certainly I dig into science and everything like that, too. I dig into psychology. But I think what gives horror a special place is that science deals with logics and facts. We're not here to, fly off into fancy about what ifs that are very improbable, I should say. Science won't deal very much. Yeah, it's impossible, okay? They're not going to go as far into zombie apocalypse as someone who's into horror, because it's just not probable. And why are we going to worry too much about something that improbable when we have real everyday problems that we need to fix? And that's a good stance to have, and that's fine. And then you get other forms of entertainment, whether sports or movies, actions. And they, I think, both for good and bad, have the flaw of wanting to make a good, happy, round story. They're not going to throw too much realism or too much, interesting situations that would make it where it's difficult to wrap up that story. Whereas horror, that's the entire point. We need to throw out all of the weirdest situations, because that's scary. How do I handle something that I know nothing about? How do I handle having a guy that haunts my dreams and kills me while I'm sleeping? No other real genre is going to tackle these kinds of ideas. And that's how you learn. Just because the situation, again, shifts and is slightly different, it might not be a zombie apocalypse, but because you prepared for a zombie apocalypse, you're now ready for anything less than that. I think flying off into the most far-flung outreaches of situations gives you kind of a lot of room to work with, to think about what most people would not immediately think is even a possibility. While we had those horror movies about, Jason and I'm blanking real hard on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. These people seem to be just stories, but no, they come from actual people who have done the serial killers. But a lot of people don't want to have that gritty realism in their face. They're here to be told a story, a nice story where there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And, more than likely there's a happy ending, or even if there's a sad ending, it's usually telling some kind of moral at the end of it.
Well, hold on a minute. In Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in the end, that lady in the truck, she was very happy. She was laughing.
True. Or House of a Thousand Corpses, where, the one lady got a new mask. And then immediately got run over. But
I think that was Devil's Rejects.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Look at you. I got to talk to you more about movies. But that's the thing, is when you are prepared for the most extreme case, that means that you're over-prepared for some of these smaller situations. And if I'm going to be over-prepared or under-prepared, I'm going to choose over-prepared. I'd rather have all the things than none of the things.
Yeah. Better to have
I
it
know
on
it's a bit of a tangent, but I think starting off in fairy tales, the whole point of fairy tales was to tell you, here are the bad things that can absolutely happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Be prepared, be vigilant, don't go into the dark, scary woods in the middle of the night by yourself with food for grandma. Don't do it. And I think horror very much tells that story as well. They don't cover up, reality in the way that a lot of other stories will.
So if I were to try to summarize that, I think in putting in my own words, I think what you're saying is, at least in the horror genre, excess is the point. Whereas in non-horror stuff, they may not be as driven to go to some of the extremes that horror does. And as you say, when you go to that kind of excess, it allows you allows you the opportunity to at least mentally prepare of the what if scenario that arises from that telling of that story. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, and I always like to use again the zombie kind of situation as a good example, just because before zombies really took off in recent times, I don't think anyone really had a plan of what to do if they were stuck in a situation where civilization has collapsed. Whereas nowadays, if it collapses, I'm going to go speak with Chris and see what his plan is and see how I can help.
To the hills.
Find who has control of the library.
Yes, that is a good one.
So I think we've pretty much wrapped up the main portion of this interview. I mean, like we kind of got down to what it is that you enjoy about horror. We've got down to what it is that you like about horror as opposed to other things. I think this one's in the can. I mean, we can put you down on the spreadsheet of, here's Mia and this is what she likes about horror.
You like
and as
horror.
Chris also says, we had some achievements here. You are the first person that has enjoyed the horror related stuff since early age, which is pretty cool.
Yay.
Yay. Since normally at this point, if you had something to peddle, we would promote or ask you to promote at this point. But we can keep this part in the interview that we mentioned. We discussed it before the call. Mia didn't have anything that she wanted to promote at this point, but her and her husband are working on some things, and hopefully by the time we get to publish this on our website, she'll have something that she does want to promote, and we'll put a little something in the blog or the bio or something like that, and link to that at that time.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I think it's going to be a really good year, and I'm hoping we can look back at the year and be very proud of what we have instead of learning how to use the bug out bags.
Yes, I know I speak for both Chris and myself. We definitely appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with us. We've both enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
We hope you have as well.
Absolutely, I loved it, and thank you for having me.
We're happy to have you. So for the listeners, we'll have a schedule posted on our website to show who we're interviewing next, as well as a list of the people we'd like to interview. Again, the website is horrormakesushappy.com. If you know of any of the people on the list and can connect us with some of those people, please do so. If you know somebody that you'd like to have added to the list, let us know. We're also going to have a bunch of other things that we'll link there. Patreon, social media, merchandise.
Stuff.
Go check that out as well. Again, the website is horrormakesushappy.com.